The night was cold and wet. Rain fell hard on the small metal roof of Daniel Ward's home. Wind howled outside, carrying the smell of the faraway sea. Inside, the lights were dim, and the only sound was the quiet hum of the heater. Daniel sat at the table, staring at a half-empty cup of tea. It had been another long day at the colony outpost. Days here were slow, and nights were even slower. Most people were asleep by now, but Daniel never went to bed early. He liked the quiet, even if it felt lonely sometimes. Then it happened. A sound broke the silence, a heavy, echoing knock on the metal door. Not the quick knock of a friendly neighbor. No, this was slow, loud, and firm, like someone who would not leave. Daniel froze. Nobody visited him at this hour. He lived on. The edge of the colony, far from the main street, the closest neighbor was half a mile away. He reached for the small blaster on the table and stood up. The knock came again. This time, it was even louder. The sound carried through the metal walls. Daniel's heart began to beat faster. He stepped quietly to the door, his boots making soft thuds on the floor. "Who is it?" He called out. There was no answer, only the hiss of the wind outside. Daniel unlocked the top latch, but kept the bottom one in place. He opened the door just a little, enough to see a shadow. A tall figure stood in the rain. Water ran down her cloak, dripping onto the metal steps. Her face was partly hidden under a hood, but two glowing yellow eyes looked straight at him. Not human eyes. They were brighter, sharper. The sight made his grip tighten on the blaster. The figure took a small step forward. Daniel tensed. Then a soft, strange voice spoke in broken English. "I will warm your bed, human, my children. Need a father." Daniel's mind froze. He thought he had heard wrong. The rain hammered against the roof. But her words were clear. Behind her, he noticed small shapes moving. 3 small figures, half hidden by her cloak. "What did you say?" he asked slowly. The woman pulled back her hood. Her skin was pale silver, with faint blue lines that glowed like veins of light. Her hair was dark, wet, and braided with small metal beads that chimed in the wind. Her eyes, those glowing eyes, did not blink. She repeated, "My mate, gone. My children, no home. You are human. You protect." Daniel glanced past her. 3 small alien children clung to her cloak. Their wide eyes filled with fear. They were shivering. Their thin clothes soaked through. The woman took another step forward. "I, widow, need shelter. Need father for them," she said. Her voice shook now. Not from the cold, but from something else. Desperation. Daniel's finger hovered near the trigger of his blaster, but he didn't raise it. Everything about this was strange. Why would an alien widow come to a human's door in the middle of the night? Why ask for such a thing? And how did she even know who he was? "You should not be here," Daniel said. "It's dangerous, especially for your kind." The woman shook her head slowly. "Danger. Already here," she whispered. Her eyes moved past him, scanning the shadows behind his house. Something about the way she looked into the darkness made Daniel uneasy. He stepped back and opened the door wider, motioning for them to come in. The children entered first, moving quickly toward the heat of the small room. The woman followed, dripping water on the floor. When the door closed, Daniel locked it tight. The woman stood near the heater, steam rising from her wet cloak. The children huddled together, whispering in a language Daniel couldn't understand. Daniel kept his blaster close, but didn't point. He noticed how the woman's hands trembled. Not from fear of him, but from exhaustion. She looked like someone who had walked through hell to get here. Finally, he said, "You need to explain, starting now." The woman nodded slowly. "My name." "Serlin," she said, pointing to herself. Her accent was thick, her words careful. My people. Attacked by sky raiders, pirates. They kill my mate, burn home, chase us. Daniel had heard of such pirates. They were ruthless and cruel. They sold survivors to the slave markets on the edge of the galaxy. If she was telling the truth, she and her children were in grave danger. You came here because? He asked. Serlin's gaze locked on his. I hear human soldier lives here. Brave, fought in war. You protect. You strong, she said. Her hand rested lightly on the shoulder of her eldest child. I will give you bond. Warmth, family. You give us safety. Daniel didn't answer right away. His mind was full of questions and warnings. But one thing was certain. If pirates were after her, they wouldn't stop until they found her. And now, they might. Come for him too. Outside, the wind grew louder, somewhere in the distance. A faint engine sound moved through the night. Daniel's gut told him this was only the beginning. Daniel watched the steam rise from Serlin's wet cloak. The heater hummed softly. Pushing away the chill from the rain, the children clung to each other, their eyes darting around the small room like frightened animals. They were small, thin, and their faces held a mix of fear and exhaustion. Daniel set his blaster on the table within reach. He was not sure if these strangers were a danger or victims. Something in Serlin's eyes told him she was telling the truth, but her sudden arrival was too perfect. Almost like someone had sent her here for a reason he didn't yet understand. Serlin slowly removed her cloak, revealing clothes patched with different fabrics. They were travel-worn, torn in some places, and stained with dirt. A faint, sweet scent rose from her, not perfume, but the natural scent of her alien kind. Daniel noticed faint scars along her arms, thin white lines that spoke of old battles. Sit, Daniel said. Pointing to the chair across from him, she obeyed, moving. Gracefully, despite her tiredness, the children stayed close to her legs. One of them holding a small round object that looked like a carved stone. Daniel poured her a cup of hot tea. She took it in both hands and breathed in the steam like it was the first warm thing she'd had in days. Start from the beginning, Daniel said, his voice steady but low. Serlin's glowing eyes locked onto his. My clan, small, live far from human colonies. She began slowly. We grow food, make homes, keep peace. Her voice wavered, and she glanced at her. Children, before continuing, 3 nights ago. Sky raiders come, ships of fire. Weapons burn the ground. Daniel could picture it. Pirate ships raining plasma fire down on a small village. Men and women screaming, running through smoke. He had seen it before in the war, and it never left the mind. They take food, take people, she said, her voice growing hard. They kill my mate when he fight. They want my oldest child. Her hand rested on the shoulder of the eldest boy, who flinched at her touch but did not pull away. Why your child? Daniel asked. She hesitated, then leaned forward, her voice almost a whisper. He is different. In my people, some born with light inside. They can heal wounds, grow plants fast. Pirates sell them to kings and warlords. Daniel's gaze shifted to the boy, who stared back with wide, bright eyes. He was young, maybe 8 years old in human years, but his gaze felt older, like he had already seen too much. I hear your name, Serlin continued, war hero from human battles. I think. Maybe human protect better than my own kind. She looked down into her cup, her hands shaking. Her pride fought with her fear. Asking for help from another species was not easy. Daniel leaned back, the chair creaking under his weight. What's strange, hearing his own name spoken by someone from across the stars. The war had ended years ago, and he had come to this remote outpost to escape it, not to be pulled back in. You said those words at my door about warming my bed, Daniel said carefully, her eyes lifted. In my clan. Sharing bed means sharing life, food, danger, breath, bond forever. She spoke with no shame, just stating fact. You give shelter, protect children. I give you family. Daniel wasn't sure if she truly meant love or if this was only survival. But he saw something in her eyes, a glimmer of trust already forming. She was betting her entire future, and the future of her children, on him before Daniel could respond. A sudden noise came from outside, a faint crunch of gravel, like footsteps on the wet ground. He rose instantly. Grabbing the blaster, "Stay here," he told her, his voice sharp. He stepped to the door and peered out into the darkness. The rain had slowed, but mist rolled across the ground. A shadow moved near the old water pump, then disappeared behind the shed. Daniel's heart beat faster. He stepped outside, boots sinking into the wet dirt. The air was cold, and every sound seemed louder than it should be. He reached the shed and swung the door open, nothing inside but tools. When he turned back, he saw Serlin at the doorway. Her children were behind her, peeking out with wide eyes. She held a long, curved blade that seemed to shimmer with its own light. "You have enemies here," she said quietly. Daniel realized she might be right. If the pirates had tracked her halfway across the planet, they could be nearby, watching, waiting. Deciding when to strike, he closed the door and bolted it inside. The heater hummed again, but the air felt heavier. Danger was close now. And Daniel knew the choice he made tonight could change his life. Serlin met his eyes. "You decide soon, human," she said softly. "My children sleep. But danger does not sleep." Daniel sat down, blaster still in his hand. For the first time in years, he felt the old pull of battle deep in his chest. This was no longer just about helping strangers. This was about survival, his and maybe theirs. Outside, somewhere in the mist, a low humming sound began to rise. It was the sound of an engine, and it was getting closer. The rain had slowed to a soft drizzle outside. The mist hung heavy over the ground like a pale blanket. Inside, Daniel sat across from Serlin at the table, the heater casting a warm glow between them. Her children were curled up on a folded blanket in the corner, already asleep, their breathing soft and even. For a moment, there was silence. Daniel could hear the slow ticking of the wall clock and the occasional crack of wind outside. He had questions, too many questions, and he needed answers before deciding anything. "Tell me everything," Daniel said, his voice calm but firm. Serlin met his gaze, her glowing eyes steady. "I already tell you pirates came," she said, her voice low. "But you must know why they came for us, why they came for him." She glanced at her eldest child, sleeping near the heater. A faint shimmer of light glowing under his skin where the collar of his tunic had slipped. Daniel leaned forward. "That's not just some natural glow, is it?" Serlin's fingers tightened around her cup. "In my people. Some are born with the luma," she said slowly. "It is the lifelight. It can heal wounds, make plants grow in dead soil, even calm the minds of angry warriors." Daniel frowned. "Sounds valuable," he said. "Valuable is weak word," she replied, her tone sharpening. "In wrong hands, luma can be used to keep armies alive forever, or make kings live long beyond their time. Pirates know this, and they would chain my child to a warlord's throne until he dies." Daniel studied the boy again. Even in sleep, there was something peaceful about him, something steady. He thought about what Serlin had said, armies that never die, rulers who live forever. It was no wonder pirates would risk crossing into human territory for him. Serlin's voice softened. "My mate was strong warrior. Key. Fight until last breath to keep them away from our home. He'd tell me to run, take children, find the one who can protect. He'd tell me your name." Daniel's brows drew together. "How would he know me?" She hesitated, then said, Years ago, in battle near Veta Hills, you saved a human supply team from an ambush. My mate was there, fighting alongside human mercenaries. He never forgot the human who stood his ground when all others ran. Daniel remembered that fight, the chaos, the smell of burning fuel. The screams he had never known who the alien fighter beside him was, but now it seemed fate had brought that moment back to him in the form of this widow at his door. You could have gone to the colony security, Daniel said. Serlin shook her head. Security cannot protect against pirates who hide in shadows and strike in silence. They would take my children before guards even wake. Daniel understood. The colony's security was meant for drunk miners and the occasional wild beast, not professional killers who moved like ghosts. She looked at him, her voice quieter now, almost breaking. I know what I ask is heavy. To protect my children is to paint target on your own back. But if you turn us away, we will die. Daniel's eyes flicked to the sleeping children. The smallest one clutched a stuffed creature with patched ears. The middle child slept with one hand curled into a fist, and the eldest, the boy with the luma, had turned slightly, a faint glow now visible on his cheek. They looked fragile, but something in their posture told Daniel they had already seen things no child should. See, Serlin, Daniel said, if I help you, there's no going back. The pirates won't stop, and you'll have to follow my rules. She nodded immediately. I follow. My children follow. We do what you say. He wasn't sure yet if that was enough, but before he could think further, there was a sound outside, a low hum, faint but growing louder. Serlin's head snapped toward the window, her eyes narrowing. That is no wind, she whispered. Daniel stood, grabbed his blaster, and moved to the side of the window through the mist. Faint red lights flickered between the trees, small. Shapes moved, not human shapes. They were too tall, too thin. With long weapons slung across their backs, Serlin moved silently to her children, touching each on the shoulder, waking them without a sound. The eldest boy's glow dimmed, as if he knew instinctively he must hide it. Daniel's mind raced. If the pirates were already here, they hadn't come for a negotiation. They had come for a grab. And that meant there were probably more waiting beyond the mist, ready to cut off any escape. Basement, Daniel whispered. Serlin didn't argue. She herded her children toward the trapdoor under the kitchen rug. Daniel kept his blaster aimed at the window, his eyes scanning for movement as the family disappeared below. Serlin paused. Her voice was steady, but her words carried the weight of a promise. If we survive this night, human, my life and my children's lives are yours. Then she vanished down into the dark. Daniel stood alone in the dim light, the hum outside now a steady growl. Somewhere beyond the mist, a shadow moved closer. The first pirate had arrived, and the night was just beginning. The hum outside grew louder. Daniel crouched near the window, keeping to the shadows. Through the mist, shapes began to form, tall, thin silhouettes, moving with silent precision. They were pirates, no doubt, but not the kind who shouted and fired wildly. These were hunters, the quiet kind, the dangerous kind. One figure moved closer, its weapon held low, scanning the area like it knew exactly what it was looking for. Daniel's grip tightened on his blaster. He counted at least 4 in sight, which meant there were probably more hidden. They were spreading out, circling the house like wolves. From the basement trapdoor, a faint creak reached his ears. Daniel glanced back, saw Serlin's pale eyes staring up at him from the darkness. She didn't speak, but her look said everything. They know we are here. The first pirate stepped onto the front porch. Rainwater dripped from its long coat. Its head turned slowly, the mask it wore reflecting the faint glow from Daniel's heater. A small red light blinked on its chest. A communicator, Daniel knew if that light turned green, it would signal the rest to move in. He couldn't wait. He moved fast, opening the window just enough to slide the blaster barrel through. He aimed at the blinking light and fired. The shot cut through the mist. With a sharp hiss, the pirate jerked back, sparks exploding from its chest unit. Then it fell silently into the wet dirt. For a second, there was quiet. Then the night erupted. From the back of the house, two pirates sprinted forward, weapons raised. Blaster bolts slammed into the walls, burning small holes through the metal siding. Daniel rolled away from the window. The heater hissed as one bolt hit it, sending steam into the room. He moved to the side door, kicked it open, and fired twice. One pirate went down instantly, but the other dived behind the water pump, returning fire in short, precise bursts through the fog. Daniel saw movement to his left, another pirate creeping toward the front door. Too close, he shifted his aim and dropped the intruder before they could reach the steps. But in the distance, he saw more red lights moving through the mist. They weren't retreating, they were committing. From below, Serlin's voice rose, urgent but calm, more coming. They move in circle. Closing in, Daniel could hear the fear in her children's muffled whispers. He couldn't let them breach the house, not while the family was trapped below. Daniel grabbed the old rifle from the wall, a heavy weapon from his military days. He slid out the side door, moving into the darkness. The mist clung to him, hiding his shape. Years of combat training guided his steps. He didn't run toward the noise, he ran to where the enemy would be. Near the shed, he spotted one pirate kneeling with a small device, a jammer. If they got it running, it would block all signals and call in reinforcements. Daniel didn't hesitate. One sharp shot and the jammer sparked. The pirate falling sideways with a grunt, but his shot gave away his position. Two more figures appeared from the mist, weapons glowing faintly. Daniel ducked behind the shed as blaster fire tore through the air. Wood splinters sprayed around him. He counted the beats between their shots. 1, 2, fire. He leaned out and returned to quick blasts, hitting one target in the leg, sending them down screaming. The other retreated into the fog, shouting in a language Daniel didn't understand. He knew what that meant. Regroup. Attack again. There was no time to waste. Daniel sprinted back to the house, the mud sucking at his boots. He slipped inside and locked the door behind him, breathing hard. Serlin emerged from the trapdoor, her curved blade in hand. Her eyes scanned him quickly, checking for wounds. "You hurt?" she asked. "Not yet," Daniel replied, "but they'll try again." A loud metallic clang shook the front of the house. They were testing the door. Another impact followed, harder this time. Daniel glanced at Serlin. "If they get through, keep the children behind you and don't stop moving," he said. She nodded once. No fear in her eyes now, only resolve. The next blow nearly tore the front door from its hinges. Daniel positioned himself just to the side, blaster ready. The door burst open with a screech. 3 pirates surged inside, weapons raised. Daniel fired point blank, dropping the first. Instantly, Serlin moved like lightning, her blade slicing through the second's arm. Sending their weapon clattering, the third swung a heavy baton toward her. But Daniel's shot caught them before it could land. For a few seconds, the only sound was the hiss of rain outside and the quick breaths of the living. Then Serlin turned her head. Listening, they stop. "But not gone," she whispered. Daniel listened to the mist outside was quiet. Too quiet. They were waiting, planning, maybe calling in more. Daniel reloaded, his mind already moving to the next step. They couldn't stay here, not with the enemy this close. If they wanted to survive, they'd have to move, and fast, in the distance. Faint over the rain came the low roar of engines. Bigger ships this time. Daniel met Serlin's eyes. "This was just the opening move," he said. She nodded once. "Then we must be ready for the real one." The night was far from over. Daniel stood by the shattered front door, Watching the mist outside shift in the wind, the smaller red lights had vanished into the fog. But the sound of the larger engines was still there, steady and patient. They weren't gone. They were waiting. Pirates had the patience of hunters. And Daniel knew if they stayed here, they would be trapped by morning. "We move now," Daniel said. Serlin looked at him without question, only gathering her children close. The eldest boy had dimmed his glow completely, hiding it like a secret flame. Daniel grabbed supplies, water, dried food, ammunition, shoving them into an old military pack. Serlin took a second pack and began filling it with small, careful movements. Her blade never far from her reach. "Where?" she asked. "Old base in the mountains." Daniel replied, "Used to be a human outpost. It's abandoned now, but it has thick walls and tunnels the pirates won't know." Serlin nodded. "Then we go," she said simply. They stepped out into the wet night. The wind had shifted, carrying the smell of damp earth and metal. The children stayed close to their mother, their small feet making almost no sound in the mud. Daniel moved first, checking every shadow, every rustle in the fog. Years of soldiers' instinct told him they were being watched, but he couldn't see. The watchers, the colony lights, were far behind them now. Small glimmers swallowed by the mist. Ahead, the land rose slowly into hills, their dark shapes outlined against the cloudy sky. The path was narrow, lined with twisted trees whose branches reached like claws toward the travelers. Serlin moved silently beside Daniel, her breathing steady despite the weight she carried. After a while, Daniel glanced at her. "You move like someone who's done this before," Hai said. Her eyes met his briefly. "I was hunter before I was mother," she replied. Her tone held no pride, just fact. "In my world, even mothers must fight for food." One of the children stumbled, and Serlin bent to lift her youngest into her arms without slowing her pace. Daniel noticed how she balanced the child's weight, keeping her blade hand free. Every movement was practiced, efficient. She was no stranger to survival. The hills grew steeper, and the mist began to thin, revealing patches of pale moonlight. From somewhere far behind came the faint sound of an engine. Daniel stopped, holding up a hand. Serlin froze. Her children going still like deer in tall grass. "They're tracking," Daniel murmured. "How far?" she asked. "Far enough that we can move, but close enough that we can't rest," he said. They pushed on. The ground became rocky, the trees giving way to jagged stones and narrow ledges. Daniel kept them to the shadows, avoiding open ground. Every so often, he glanced back, half expecting to see a flicker of red light in the dark. As they climbed higher, the air grew colder. The eldest child shivered, and Daniel handed him his own scarf. The boy stared at it for a moment before taking it silently, wrapping it around his neck. It was a small thing, but Daniel noticed the boy's eyes soften just a little. By the time the first gray light of dawn touched the horizon, they had reached the edge of the mountain pass. Below them stretched miles of empty land, the colony just a faint speck in the distance. Daniel pointed ahead. "Once we pass through here, we're close," he said. Serlin's eyes narrowed at the dark shapes of the cliffs ahead. "Close is not safe," she said. "No," Daniel agreed, "but it's better." Then out in the open, they followed a narrow trail along the cliffside, the drop to their left disappearing into thick mist. The youngest child clung to Serlin's neck, her small fingers gripping tightly. The middle child walked close to Daniel now, occasionally glancing up at him like he was trying to figure out if this human could really be trusted. Halfway through the pass, a sudden sound froze them all. A sharp, metallic crack echoed across the rocks. Daniel dropped to a crouch, motioning for them to get low. The sound came again, not from behind, but ahead. He scanned the path and saw it. A tripwire stretched low across the trail, barely visible. In the dim light trap, he muttered. Serlin moved forward, crouching beside him. She traced the wire to a small, dark object hidden among the rocks. Her voice was low, explosive, not pirate design. Older. Maybe from war. Daniel studied it. If it was from the war, it could be unstable. One wrong move, and it would blow half the trail apart. He carefully cut the wire, moving slow and steady. When it was done, he glanced at Serlin. Someone else has been through here recently, he said. Her jaw tightened. Then maybe pirates not only danger, she replied. They moved again, faster now. The sun was climbing, and with the light came more risk of being seen. Finally, they reached a ridge that overlooked a hidden valley at the far end, half buried in rock and vines. Stood the old human base. Its walls were high, its gates heavy, and its roof dotted with rusted turrets. That's it, Daniel said. Serlin studied it for a moment. Looks like tomb, she said. Daniel gave a small smile. Sometimes a tomb is the best place to hide. They began the descent into the valley, unaware that far above them, a glint of metal flashed in the sunlight. Someone was watching from the cliffs, and a small signal light blinked twice before going dark. The valley was quiet, too quiet. Daniel led the way down the slope, toward the old human base, his eyes scanning the cliffs on either side. The walls of the base loomed ahead, weathered and scarred, the heavy gates leaning slightly on rusted hinges. Weeds pushed through cracks in the concrete, and the air smelled faintly of damp metal. Serlin kept her children close, one hand always on the hilt of her curved blade. Her gaze darted from shadow to shadow. You said no one knows this place? She whispered. They shouldn't, Daniel replied. But even as he said it, his gut told him something wasn't right. They reached the gates. Daniel pushed one side open enough for them to slip through. Inside, the courtyard was overgrown. Old supply crates stacked in one corner. The roof of a small watchtower had caved. In its ladder snapped halfway up, the silence pressed against them like a weight. Stay here, Daniel said. He moved toward the entrance to the main building. The barrel of his blaster leading the way, the door creaked open, revealing a long hallway lined with dusty windows. The air inside was cooler. Carrying the smell of old oil and dust, he stepped forward, his boots echoing faintly. That was when he saw it, fresh footprints in the dust, not old, not weathered. New, he froze, scanning the corners. The prints led deeper into the base. Toward the central chamber, a soft click behind him made him spin around. Two figures stepped out from the shadows. Pirates, their masks gleaming in the dim light. Before he could fire, another voice echoed through the chamber. Well, well. Daniel Ward, hero of Verda Hills. Daniel's stomach tightened. From the far doorway stepped a tall man in dark armor, his face hidden behind a half-mask. But the voice was familiar. Corin, Daniel said, through clenched teeth. He had fought beside Corin years ago, a mercenary captain who had saved lives, but later vanished after rumors of selling allies to the highest bidder. You always had a way of finding trouble, Corin said with a mocking tone. And you always had a way of making money off it, Daniel replied. Corin laughed, the sound echoing off the walls. This isn't trouble, old friend. This is business. The alien widow and her glowing child are worth more than you can imagine. Daniel's hand tightened on his blaster. You've been following us, he said. Corin tilted his head from the moment she stepped off that transport. You think pirates just happened to find her? I sent them. Before Daniel could answer, movement flickered at the edge of his vision. 4 more pirates emerged from the side corridors, their weapons trained on him in the courtyard. Serlin's voice rang out sharply, the sound of her blade striking metal. Daniel turned toward the doorway, firing a quick shot that dropped the nearest pirate. Chaos exploded in the courtyard. Serlin was surrounded, 3 pirates pressing in from different sides. Her blade flashed, blocking. A strike, and slashing low. One attacker fell back with a cry. Daniel fired from the doorway, taking down another before it could flank her. The children huddled behind an overturned crate. The eldest boy gripping the carved stone like it was a talisman. Corin stepped in too. The open, raising his weapon. "You can't win this, Daniel. Hand them over, and I'll let you walk." Daniel's jaw tightened. "You know me better than that," he said. In a single movement, he tossed a small smoke canister to the ground. Thick gray mist filled the air, swallowing shapes and blinding. Sight Serlin moved through it like a shadow. Her glowing eyes cutting through the haze, Daniel heard the sharp ring of her blade. The crack of his own blaster. A pirate stumbled into view, coughing, before dropping to the ground. Another shape lunged toward Daniel from the mist, but Serlin's blade intercepted, sending the attacker sprawling. The smoke thinned. Only 2 pirates were still standing, both edging backward toward the gates. Daniel aimed at Corin, but the man had already retreated into the shadows of the base, his mocking laugh echoing as he vanished. "This isn't over, Ward. The galaxy's a small place," his voice carried. Silence fell over the courtyard. The ground was littered with fallen attackers, the air heavy with the smell of smoke and metal. Serlin stood breathing hard, her blade slick with rain and something darker. Daniel moved to her side, checking her quickly for injuries. "I'm fine," she said, shaking her head. Her gaze shifted toward the empty doorway where Corin had disappeared. "You know him?" she stated. Daniel's eyes hardened. "I thought I did." "He's worse than I remember." They both knew this fight had changed everything. It wasn't just random pirates anymore. It was a coordinated hunt, led by someone who knew Daniel. Someone who wouldn't stop until he got what he wanted. Serlin gathered her children, her voice steady despite the tension. "This place is not safe. He will return." Daniel nodded. "Then we'll be ready," he said, but deep inside, he knew readiness might not be enough. Corin was a predator who planned his kills like a game. And now Daniel and Serlin were the pieces on his board. From far away, faint and distant, came the low hum of engines again. It was a reminder the hunt had only paused, not ended. The sun was dipping behind the mountains. The old human base lay quiet, its walls casting long shadows across the valley. Inside the courtyard, Daniel stood beside a small fire, warming his hands. The smoke curled upward into the cooling air, carrying the faint scent of burnt wood and the sharper tang of blaster residue from the earlier fight. Serlin sat nearby with her children, sewing a tear in her youngest's cloak with a thin silver thread. The eldest boy helped, his small hands surprisingly steady. The middle child sat cross-legged, tracing patterns in the dirt with a stick, humming softly for the first time since they had met. There was no rushing, no running. It felt almost like peace. Daniel watched them quietly. He had spent years avoiding attachments, keeping to himself in this far corner of the galaxy. But now, in less than a day, these strangers had taken root in his life like seeds dropped in fertile soil, and despite the danger that came with them, he felt something he hadn't felt in years. Purpose. Serlin looked up, her eyes catching the firelight. "You are thinking about leaving," she said softly. Daniel shook his head. "I was thinking about staying," he replied. Her gaze lingered on him for a moment, measuring the truth in his words. Then she nodded once. "You saved us," she said. "I protect my own," Daniel answered. Her expression softened at that. "In my people's way, those who protect become part of the family," she said. "Not by blood, but by choice. The choice is stronger." The children looked up now, their curious eyes moving between the two adults. The eldest boy spoke in a quiet voice, his basic accented but clear. "You be our father now." The question hung in the air, simple and heavy. Daniel hesitated. He had never thought of himself as a father. But when he looked at the boy, he saw trust, hard-earned. "Given carefully, yes," Daniel said finally, his voice steady. "If you'll have me." The boy's small mouth curved into the faintest smile. Serlin reached across the fire, placing her hand over his. "Then it is done," she said. In our tradition, words are enough. The bond is made. For a while, they sat together, the fire crackling softly. Daniel told them stories from his days in the military, not the bloody parts, but the clever escapes, the lucky wins, the strange worlds he had seen. Serlin listened closely, sometimes laughing, sometimes shaking her head at the risks he had taken. Her children leaned in, wide-eyed, absorbing every word, but the peace was fragile. Daniel's soldier's mind never stopped working. He had reinforced the gates after the fight, set traps along the lower trail, and hidden the entrance to the valley as best he could. Yet he knew Corin was still out there, and the man's kind didn't give up. The quiet now was only the space between storms. When the fire burned low, Serlin rose and walked to the edge of the courtyard. She looked out toward the darkening valley, her cloak fluttering in the wind. Daniel joined her, following her gaze. "You think they'll come tonight?" he asked. She shook her head. "No. They will wait until they think we are weak." "But they will come," he didn't argue. They both knew it was true. "That gives us time," Daniel said. "Time to make this place more than a shelter. Time to make it a home." Her eyes met his. "And time to make us a family," she said, her voice almost a whisper. For a moment, neither spoke. The wind carried the faint sound of the children's laughter behind them, a sound that didn't belong in a place so dangerous, yet felt like a promise of something worth fighting for. That night, Daniel took the first watch, sitting by the gate with his rifle resting across his knees. The stars were sharp above the mountains, the air cold and thin. He listened to the quiet, to the soft breathing of the sleeping family inside. His mind went back to Corin's voice, the threat woven into his words. Daniel had faced enemies before, but this was different. This time, he wasn't just fighting for himself. He was fighting for them, halfway through the night. He heard it, a faint echo far off in the valley, the slow, deliberate thump of engines in the distance. It faded after a moment, but it left a weight in his chest, a reminder that the danger was moving, circling, waiting. When Serlin relieved him for the second watch, she didn't ask if he had heard anything. She just met his eyes, and he knew she had felt it too. They stood together for a moment at the gate, the moonlight turning her silver skin almost white. "We will be ready," she said. Daniel nodded. "Always, in the morning." The family would begin fortifying the base, setting hidden paths and traps, preparing for the fight they knew was coming. But for now, in the quiet before dawn, they stood side by side, not just as two survivors, but as something more. A new family, forged in danger, bound by choice, and ready to face the storm together, far away beyond the ridges. A signal light blinked once, then vanished. The hunt was far from over, but Daniel no longer faced it alone.